Reactive Training Systems.
All right, welcome back to the RTS podcast. We're taking a little break from the RTS seminar here in Fort Lauderdale to sit down and chat with Ben Esgro, talking about nutrition stuff today. So, Ben, if you don't already know, he's a nutrition expert, does nutrition prep work for bodybuilders, strength athletes, kind of a whole range of athletes, also owner of Novo Nutrition. So broad range of expertise. So you gave some presentations about nutrition as it pertains to strength athletes, right?
Yeah. Well, I guess, do you want me to just kind of go into?
Yeah, like what's your general philosophy when it comes to nutrition? How important is it for strength athletes?
I think that typically there tends to be this segregation or belief of segregation between kind of the physique realm and then the purely performance realm of, let's just use for a perfect example here is like the bodybuilder who gets on stage to look good versus the powerlifter who gets on the platform to perform well. Specifically, that's their isolated kind of view. And the reality is that they're both united through common goals. One of them being they both want to have the most lean tissue and typically the least fat tissue because we're talking about Wilks score. And so the nutrition intervention, it's not this kind of magical formula between different individuals, and there's a lot of core principles, just like programming for someone who wants to compete in powerlifting versus someone who just wants to get stronger. You're adhering to a lot of core principles, and I think that's something that it should be made clear to really anybody who thinks there is this very distinctive separation. Is just like we're tracking training volume throughout the year for, again, powerlifters, bodybuilders as well, or any general lifter. We need to, if we want to be able to eat the most and still predict outcomes, or let's say we're at a higher weight class, we want to make a weight class and eat as much as we can while performing well and making that weight class, we need to track. So just like tracking training volume, sets, reps, intensity, tracking macronutrients, protein, carbohydrates, fat is essential because we need to know your total energy. Because again, volume dictates change in body composition and strength levels, and macros dictate change in body composition. So,
okay. So, in your view, like the bodybuilder and the powerlifter don't have a whole lot of divergence when it comes to nutritional strategies. Is there a difference in the relative importance for each athlete, or do you think that that's very similar as well?
Well, I guess I would clarify and say that I think the major thing that does separate them is usually that period of pre-contest, either peaking in bodybuilding and then peaking for, a meet. But even still, you're, again, adhering to most core principles. It's just this could kind of get off on a tangent, but to put it simply, a lot of bodybuilders from the old school typically do a lot of fluid manipulation, sodium manipulation, and now as we get more, science into the field, we're learning that that's actually not necessary. So that whole peaking concept isn't even really that different anymore either. So I just kind of deconstructed my own answer. But I'm sorry, what was the second question?
So, well, it just seems like for, let's say an off-season bodybuilder, off-season powerlifter, they're going to have similar nutrition strategies. Maybe somebody that's working with you will have similar nutrition strategies. When you get into that pre-contest time, there would be a bit of divergence, the same principles applying, but a bit of divergence in how those principles actually apply, right?
Yeah, and primarily what it comes down to is just getting really good at tracking and being patient with somebody. I know that's not a good specific answer, but what I'm kind of getting at in that response is that if we've been working with this individual, so again, I think the best way to parallel this response is in training, which I'm sure what most people are coming from the background to hear about nutrition from. So we're going to assume that we've been working with this person through a couple mesocycles.
Sure.
as we're peaking them for the meet. They're not just going to come to us 3 weeks and say, okay, peak me for a meet. You know what I mean? So assuming that we have that in place, we have a good set of data to work from. So now we just don't need to build this whole new intervention off of that. We just need to progressively intervene each week based on progress. So again, just like you're doing within a microcycle for training, is you're intervening based on performance data. Mm-hmm. With this, we're intervening based on body composition data and more superficial data. So it's a very dynamic process, but it's dynamic every week. It's not just dynamic in the pre-contest period. And it's for both the bodybuilder and the powerlifter. So really the only thing that changes it on a large scale is the I want to say primary outcome, meaning if you're trying to make weight for a class, for a class within your powerlifting meet, or you're trying to just and on a time frame, or you're just trying to generally lose weight or change body comp or something like that. But like I said, as I talk more about it, though, I keep realizing how much more parallels there are, because the big thing with bodybuilding is it's a controlled diet for a timeline. Mm-hmm. Like, you're trying to be at your best shape and condition for a date. It's the same thing for a powerlifting meet. You want to have the highest performance. So obviously we don't want to have people walking around shredded that are 5% body fat. Right. It screws with all your biomechanics. But we do want to have you performing well at as lean as you can, because you'll have the best Wilks score within your class.
Yeah. So what's the kind of the sweet spot then for a powerlifter? I mean, clearly you don't want to diet them down so that they're stage ready or something like that. Yeah. Is there a general rule like, hey, this seems to be?
I love that question. That's a great question. And it's going to be relative to that individual, meaning where do they usually hang out, like without any kind of diet intervention, and really after they've been training for a while. So if, let's say, someone came to me and they were 30% body fat, and this was before they were trained, then they trained and now they hover around 20, and that's where they like their strength, that's where they perform really well. Well, we probably want to keep them around that, unless we know for a fact that like that excess weight is inhibitory and their strength is progressing so well that we can kind of work on cutting them down. But again, time frame is the real question, because if this individual, and we know when working with a varied range of individuals, that people expect results, like, and fairly quickly. So if you're going to work with somebody and you have to tell them, well, we're going to diet you, you're going to look better, but your lifts are going to go down. That's kind of a hard sell. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So if you have 2 years and you could say, okay, what we're going to do is over the course of 2 years, slowly get you down to the lighter weight class that you want to lift at. That's the best possible scenario.
So making slow changes then over a greater period of time.
The analogy I used yesterday was just that no one goes in and expects within one block to go from a 100-pound 1RM squat to a 300-pound 1RM squat. We shouldn't expect to lose 30 pounds on 4 weeks in the diet. But we're sold it so constantly through media and magazines and supplement ads and all of the ridiculous things that we're propagating this terrible message, and people come and they expect it now. And then when you actually give them a good, valid, evidence-based answer, they think that you're lying to them because the media is telling, you know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
So and you're kind of juggling with this, okay.
You can't help people that you can't convince to embark.
And
but you also have to maintain some integrity when you do it.
Exactly. So what it comes down to is, okay, and now this can get into psychology type thing.
We often do.
Yeah. And it is. Nutrition is, too, psychology, because you are working with an emotional individual, especially when they're dieting. There's a lot of emotions and people eat emotionally, too. But anyway, I'll get back on a more linear track. And I just lost my track. I'm sorry, what was the thought?
Talking about psychology.
Yeah, but before that, what was the thought that drove us in this direction? I know. It was a good point too, and I wanted to continue to.
No,
What people actually expect. I guess we could just cut that time out, right?
Yeah.
What people usually expect is, are they open to hearing another perspective, or do they want you to justify their current beliefs?
Sure.
There's a very big difference. I will put that time investment in for the person who's open to hearing, okay, let's talk this through.
Yeah.
Here's what your beliefs are. This is what actually, the data says. This is what your belief says. So let's see if we can get to some kind of common ground. And if they're willing to that, and I'm not trying to push an agenda on anybody, but obviously, I've spent a decade of my life, researching this. I don't just read Men's Health and pull. I like the way that sounds. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, if they're willing to listen and we can reach some kind of logical agreement, then, like I said, we can work together. But usually, if someone just wants me to justify their current beliefs, then you're not getting anywhere.
Sure.
You're not going to be able to help them too well.
Sure. We started to kind of branch off into psychology a bit, which honestly makes me think of something that you guys do at your gym with gummy bears.
Gummy bears, right.
Which is, so we were talking earlier about culture and stuff like that, and I don't know, that's one of the neat culture things that I think exists. So my guess is that that's primarily a psychological tool and not really a nutritional tool.
No, well, it depends. If we
So, anyways, sorry. Let's back up for a second, in case somebody doesn't know. What do you guys do with gummy bears?
we usually have a good supply of gummy bears on, and usually the type of gummy bear that we have dictates the training of the day. So
I like that.
we usually the favorites that we have are worms and bears, cola bottles that come back in. Sometimes they're sour, but nonetheless, there is a little bit of a psychological effect of having a little bit of sugar. That's how it started. It's just kind of some quick carbs right in the middle of training if someone doesn't come prepared. But it has become, training has stopped because we run out of gummy bears. So there does become a psychological dependency does develop on the gummy bears.
Sure.
I'll get on someone if they're spending too much time with the gummy bears. But and you can tell, and funny enough, I'll use it as a marker also if I'm seeing one of our lifters kind of wasting, keep wandering back to the box. Maybe there's something else going on with them. So
Yeah.
gummy bears are very useful.
It's a good indicator, right?
Tracking data.
Exactly.
Gummy bear consumption.
We do, and literally we'll go through. I think there was a point where we're going through over a pound of gummy bears a day.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
Yeah, we had.
You need to contact who's that manufacturer that got in a lot of trouble on Amazon for the
Yeah, exactly. No, we don't have any
sugar-free ones.
Yeah. then other things.
Yeah.
But there's a legitimate reason why we started putting them in the gym.
Sure.
It just did develop into part of the culture, and I think there literally would be one of those things where there would be a revolt if we took them out of the gym.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can never stop having gummy bears.
Well, before you continue on, I think we've got to take a quick break. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. We'll pick up right where we left off. All right, guys, we're back. We were talking about nutrition, psychology, stuff like that. During the break, we actually had a pretty interesting line of thought that came up. You want to pick up?
We were talking about. I think this applies for the new lifter, and I would honestly say the experienced lifter as well. But
Definitely.
What are your thoughts on cutting too quickly to get to a weight class, or cutting to get to a weight class, especially if you're not competitive? I'll take that back. You are competitive, but it's not like you're going for a place. Not yet.
Maybe a more novice type.
More novice.
Yeah.
Say maybe under 3 meets under your belt.
Even for somebody who might be pseudo elite category or even elite category to where they're top 3 at nationals, I still think that it comes down to somewhat of an ability to keep things in perspective. Meaning, if you're great at this weight, you need to be able to see the reality of the scenario that because your numbers are awesome at that weight class, you're not going to keep the same numbers when we diet you down 22 pounds. I mean, potentially long term we might be able to, but realistic expectations are a really important key. I mean, anytime you're working with individuals, you need to be able to keep things in context for them, or help them keep things in context. And I think, also what that concept touches upon is people wanting to get in and kind of hit the ground running instead of going from maybe the jazzercise fast-paced walk to a little bit of a jog and then get into a sprint. And it's much more appropriate because, again, with any kind of adaptation, we don't typically do that. And if you do, you get crushed because you get a negative response to it because your body's trying to fight back.
The adaptations happen, and you can adapt to extreme things, but it takes a while for those adaptations to happen. And if you rush the process, then that's when you get, your own body rebelling against you.
It's much harder to predict.
Yeah.
You have a lot more variability.
So I think it sounds like there's a distinct parallel between strength gains and diet gains. So you shouldn't expect to add 200 pounds to your total in 3 months, especially if you've been in it for a year or so. We say let's get past the novice gains. So the way you
people have been eating, we don't get any truly novice eaters,
right?
Yeah. Well, and everybody thinks they're a food expert because everybody eats,
right?
Yeah.
So,
and they read the internet.
Yeah.
They know everything.
I've researched Google very thoroughly.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we live in a very pharmaceutical, quick solution society, and someone reads that gain muscle, lose fat, same time, and they run with that concept and say, well, I heard I can gain muscle and lose fat, when that's it's a very specific type of scenario where that happens, but they take it and because they want to believe that it can be extrapolated out to this crazy extreme scenario, and okay, so I can go from 20% to 8% body fat and
gain muscle in the process.
And gain a ton, and go from 15-inch biceps to 20.
And add 50 points to your Wilks.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But don't do that. No.
And buy a new car.
Right?
Yeah. Just bringing a total variable into that.
Everything, right.
Yeah.
So, another thing that we touched on real quick, I just want to get your thoughts real quick on, this notion of food as fuel.
Yeah.
It seems that it's, at least in some circles, it seems to be losing a little bit of popularity, but I know it's still going strong in some places, and I hear it from time to time. Well, I know food is fuel, and I need to be eating these certain things. I always tell people it's more than fuel. So what are your thoughts on this?
There's actually I spent quite a bit of time of my introduction yesterday reviewing this concept of how we view foods, where we've gone, if we look back from 300 to 500 BC, ancient Greece, on how we viewed food, we viewed it as food contains aliment, which is basically nourishment. We couldn't describe what it contains, just that it has something that we need. And then over time, it took us quite a while until the mid 1900s. We started to realize, okay, it has vitamins, it has macronutrients that are essential for life, for energy, and so yes, we need fuel. We need food to give us energy, but we also have essential nutrients in food that do more than just give us energy. For example, vitamins, minerals, which are cofactors in energy production. So I mean, tons of functions outside of just simply energy. So I think a lot of ideas get popularized because of their incredible simplicity, that it catches like wildfire. So it's partially appropriate, but you can go deeper than that. And
so it's this notion that we need to make these ideas simple, but not too simple. Break it down as simple as we can, but not more than that.
And here's the thing: is simple things are great for analogies, but they're not good for a deeper understanding. And what are people craving more and more now in this time of the internet age is they want deeper answers. So they don't want to just hear, I just want to get stronger. Because at a certain point, you plateau with strength. Now you need to get a deeper understanding.
Sure.
That's not going to work anymore, where you just say, okay, 5 by 5, done, solution.
Right.
No, well, now you need to start tracking your volume and seeing what's actually controlling changes.
Yeah. Yeah, like you're saying, get a deeper understanding. What are Are there any other things that that food is important for? And I'm kind of leading you to a place here. We touched on psychology and things like that a little bit, and you mentioned briefly about how people being social creatures. There's a social component to eating as well. How important do you think that is in terms of an athlete reaching their goals? Is that something that you consciously consider when you're planning for your athletes?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's kind of a tough question to answer because food has become such a part of social life. Like, look at what we've done this whole weekend: is we go out to eat and we talk and we converse and we converse over food, and it's a bonding thing, and that's deeply rooted into our DNA. Because if you can see it throughout any kind of higher animals, that
it's human nature.
But not even just human, like all primates. Like you have the alpha male lion kills, and then the pack all kind of feeds, and so it is somewhat social. It's a social gathering. We've just complicated it by talking and understanding each other through a method that we can't understand. And they don't. But I think the best way I can answer that question is that in just conversing, I think there's sometimes not enough to be said for communication with clients and helping them actually put things into context with the recommendations I give them, because I can't sit there and be their tutor. I can't teach you nutrition, again, 10 years of academic nutrition in 3 months of consulting. But what I can do is when I give you a plan, if you have a problem or a question, then I can help put it into context by using an analogy that might work for your field. Like you said, the food is fuel thing. And in my slides yesterday, to get people the understanding of the ATP as fuel and ATP going down to mitochondria and using it to, food going down to eventually till mitochondria to where it gets oxidized and make ADP from it. Same thing with taking oil out of the ground, refining it, and then it going into an internal combustion engine and it making us be motive. And you know what I mean? So the analogies help a lot, but it's dangerous when there's a perceived authority by, I worked with a coach for 2 months. He gave me a really good analogy. I totally know. I made great progress for myself.
Therefore, I have this.
Therefore, I can make great progress.
It's people that kind of mistake the map for the territory.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I think we're just about out of time. We're going to have to head back out, eat some food, and do some things. Yeah, socialize a bit ourselves. So thanks, guys, for watching. We'll make sure to see you guys next time.